When I started this season, little did I know that I was about to watch what might be one of the best seasons of Star Trek ever frickin' written. But here we are. Here we freaking are. Hello, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well, and I am super excited to be talking about the next 5 episodes in Star Trek Prodigy's second season, episodes 6 through 10 that have been released on Netflix. These ones titled From the Beginning, Impostor Syndrome, The Race, Veritas with a question mark, and The Time-Devouring Scavengers Parts 1 and 2. I hope that those are the correct titles. There's been some confusion over what titles are which, so if I got some of them wrong, let me know down in the comments and give me that sweet, sweet engagement. But regardless, we're going to be talking about those 5 episodes, and just going to let you know right now, I am going to talk full spoilers about these 5 episodes. We're going to go full on into them, but I will not be talking about spoilers beyond these 10 episodes because I have not seen them yet. So if you have not gotten into the back half of the second season of Prodigy yet, don't worry. I will not be doing any spoilers for that. And also looks like we're going to be joined by my boy Kipo hanging out here. How you doing, buddy? You want to see? He wants to see outside. He's like, why am I looking at like a windshield? I don't know. I'm in a mood tonight, so let's just talk about it. He's going to have some fun there. Let us have some fun here talking about Star Trek Prodigy. Hot damn. Just talking overall about these 5 episodes, one of my critiques that I had in my review of the first 5 episodes of this season so far was that I feel like we had lost some of the episodic nature of Star Trek Prodigy that I really, really loved in season 1. And hot damn, I should have held that back because it goes full bore back into some really great episodic episodes here in these 5 episodes, just to overuse the word. Each one of these 5 episodes, except for the last 2 where it's a part 1 and part 2, are really kind of doing their own thing while also connecting into the larger storyline. And I actually really like reviewing this chunk because we kind of have our characters set off on their own mini adventure as they go and look for Chakotay and the Protostar to try and write the timeline. And that's sort of our driving thrust for this part of the season, but it really just allows the show to kind of have like little fun adventures along the way. The first of which being Impostor Syndrome, which it features our characters creating digital hologram doubles that then get confused for themselves and kind of creating this fun sort of like, oh, who is who, what is what, which one of us is the real one question, and then them actually having an existential crisis at one point, as Jenkinpog said, basically, am I who I actually am? What does it mean to be me? Loved this. This was a lot of fun of just like, again, kind of playing with some cool ideas of the holodeck. When you know, there's a lot of stuff with the holodeck that we see in the older Star Trek shows that kind of became very rote. Like, oh, the safeties are off and something's gone wrong with the holodeck. And we didn't really get a lot of more evolution of that after, even Next Generation. I think the biggest evolution of it was mainly with the Doctor, as we saw in Star Trek Voyager. And then after that, not really much else. And it is, high praise to the writers of Prodigy to be able to do something new with the holodeck and actually like start questioning identity. And it's really kind of fun just to see these moments where the holograms sort of confuse each other. They're not really sure what's going on. And so I think, especially since this episode had a lot to do in the heavy lifting of getting our characters off the Voyager A and off on this other adventure, like it was trying to do a lot there. So the fact that it did have enough time to set up this concept, play with it a little bit, and then resolve it enough that it felt like we had a kind of decent exploration of it, I think is a really deep credit to this episode. I feel like there's a lot more you could have done with this concept, but again, considering we only had 22 odd minutes and that they were doing other things, it's honestly a credit that they were able to get so much done and play so much with this. But I do like also that Majel, who the Vulcan Nova Squadron member here, does end up helping them and really sort of distracts and allows them to get off the ship in time. And I'm really liking her character quite a lot and her relationship with Zero as they start to build. Also, something I didn't even catch this, someone else noted to me, but Majel obviously is referring to Majel Barrett, who is the wife of Gene Roddenberry. She passed away. She was also the voice of the computer. She was also Nurse Chapel wonderful in the original series, as well as Deanna Troy's mother, one of my favorite characters in Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. So clearly a big influence on Star Trek for numerous reasons, in numerous ways. And so to name a character after her feels very appropriate. So I didn't even catch that. I mean, I love her helping them out here. And yeah, this is just a fun episode overall. I do want to say, too, I also really love the ending where they sort of the hologram versions get re-downloaded and they all switch personalities. That's just a lot of fun. I adore stuff like that's great. Which then brings us to the next episode called The Race, which I think, to my mind, was probably the weakest of this batch of episodes. Not a ton to say about it, but what I do like about it is, again, going to the episodic feel of Star Trek. This felt very much like an original series episode where we have an evil computer doing evil computer things, controlling the populace, and yet mixing in with some Star Trek Voyager iconography. We have the Kazons here, our trash bag Klingons, as I like to call them, showing up. So just a fun mixture of a bunch of different elements, but it really did feel like, oh, we're going to have this like race, and there's this evil computer who wants to perfect people and is trying to work to like make people like their ultimate selves. Again, just a very 1960s-esque style Star Trek concept that I thought was just really fun to play with. So again, I think it's the weakest episode. I don't have a ton to say about it, to be quite frank with you, but it just felt like, oh, this is just a solid ode to that era of Star Trek with its evil computers and such. However, this does bring me to the next episode, Veritas ? That I think was my personal favorite. Well, the next two actually might be my personal favorites, but this one I hold in very high esteem, because this one felt like what I've wanted Star Trek to do for a while in the modern era, and it hasn't really been giving me, which is very philosophical, very weird, very conceptual science fiction. It very much, an episode like this very much evoked for me Star Trek the Motion Picture, where it's like these big ideas, these big grand ideas kind of played out in a civilization mindset. And again, kind of very 1960s, Star Trek-esque 1970s, but played out in a really interesting way with the character of Zero, who gets a corporeal body, becomes part of this a community of people who are all non-corporeal entities who want bodies and sort of are seeking senses and seeking like feeling and being corporeal. And they obviously were hiding something from Zero, and the fact that they love to feel fear. And so, you know, they have this running, I forget what it is, like this manta ray thing that might eat them, that will possibly kill them, but that gives them fear and makes them feel alive and feel like really their endorphins rushing through their body. And that sort of being the twist of the episode, and Zero's friends wanting them to be able to have a choice in knowing the full context of what comes with being corporeal. Again, very heady science fiction idea. I really, really love this. It feels very like classic Star Trek, but also I love it that it mixes in with Zero's journey this season so far as well, with them wanting to have a corporeal body and wanting to feel like they are able to touch and have senses. And I'm curious to see where that's going to go with Majel, because clearly they're building a romance of some sort, which, by the way, queer romance in a Star Trek show, non-binary character and a woman, love it. Here for that. One of the better ones done that Star Trek has done so far, which I'm really liking. It's a better non-binary gender-like relationship than we got in even Star Trek Discovery, and I say that with love towards Adira and Gray. But anyways, just this desire to be corporeal, to feel, to have senses, and I'm sure that's going to mix in with Majel and wanting to have a relationship with her. And one other thing I was thinking in this episode is that it's a good thing that this was a kids show, because if Gene Roddenberry had written this episode and had a feast of the senses, y'all know the man would have had a bunch of orgies there. There would be orgies on this planet. That would be definitely this hedonistic thing that Gene Roddenberry is doing. Nothing against orgies. I'm here for orgies, but definitely would have been in Gene Roddenberry's vision to have that. But also, I like that this is an idea of kind of exploring, you know, queerness in a non-expressly queer way, in a very metaphorical way of coming to accept, like, what are you? Do I want to be like these other people? Do I want to assimilate into a corporeal life, assimilate into this version of existence that other people have? You know, like a big thing in the queer community is assimilationism versus, radical, like, fighting against the system. Like, do queer people really seek to end up being, getting a heteronormative marriage? Like, do we seek to just be a husband and wife, or wife and wife, or husband and husband, just like cis-normative culture wants us to be? Is that what we ultimately seek? Do we seek to just be considered normal? Do we seek to be considered just integrate into this system that does not always accept us as who we are? And Zero, I think, is having that same journey here, right? Where Zero wants to be corporeal, wants to have these same experiences that their corporeal friends have, and kind of deny who they are because, they have to hide who they are in order to protect everyone else. Because if you see a Medusan, then you go crazy, as they say. You lose memories. And so just this idea of wanting to assimilate, I find fascinating. The episode doesn't fully resolve it, though. And actually, Zero does stay corporeal by the end of this, and we learn that maybe their body will decay. So clearly, this is going to be a concept that's going to come up further on down the road. And I'm really curious to see where the episode's going to land on, because this is my personal hope. I personally hope that there's a way that the show goes where Zero can be their full selves and be accepted for who they are, rather than having to find this, like, assimilationist, like, in the middle, or can find who they are in a suit sort of way. And I think, and that goes to me being, I am certainly someone who wishes to push against the machine, but I'm also getting married. I just proposed to my partner, for those of you who don't know. So there's a part of me that does seek, to assimilate in some senses, to conform in some ways, and seek these things that, heteronormative culture also wants. But also there's a part of me that's like, fuck this system, let's tear it down. It's oppressive to trans and queer people no matter who's in charge. I mean, look at this is a political discussion for another day, but what the Biden administration is just saying about transgender care for minors recently. Like, no matter who's in charge, whether it be Trump or Biden, Biden's certainly better than Trump. I'm going to be voting for Biden. But at the end of the day, they're both not really uplifting the trans and queer community, no matter what, because that's the way the system is. It's not built for us. And so, again, longer discussion there, but again, this idea of, like, assimilationism or revolutionary action against a system that doesn't fit you. And I'm curious to see where Zero is going to fit with that within a Star Trek world, because Star Trek is very much about, like, a more utopian ideal of that, like being willing to not just accommodate, but celebrate. And hopefully we get to a point in this show where it's like, no, we're not going to try to accommodate Zero. We're going to celebrate who Zero is and allow them and enable them to be their full self. So again, this episode I have a lot of big hearts for, because it was exploring really cool ideas, felt very 1960s, 1970s Star Trek with these, like, big heady ideas, but explored in a very modern sensibility, and also about the power of friendship and caring in there as well, which fits kids shows, but is also just a theme that I genuinely like about community and connection, and it's just a Star Trek vibe, So very much a big fan of this one, might be one of my favorites, but this does lead us into the two-part finale, and hot freaking damn, this is everything that I've wanted in modern Star Trek to be able to do, because we get Wesley Crusher finally crushing it. Wesley Crusher has appeared in a couple different Star Trek shows over the past few years. He's appeared in Star Trek Picard Season 2. He was in Flashback briefly in Star Trek Lower Decks last season, this year, I think, still, technically. Whatever the last season, Star Trek Season 4 of Lower Decks. And there was talk, even around Star Trek Picard Season 2 when he appeared, that there was fighting over getting him. And it appears that everyone kind of wanted Wesley Crusher. And for my money, again, as someone who loves Lower Decks, I think that his appearance here is the version that I like the most, because, Wesley Crusher has always been a contentious character in Star Trek history. But when he became a traveler at the end of Next Generation, I think a lot of us really wanted to see what happened next with that journey of, like, what does it mean to be this person who's outside of time, who is using thought to be able to guide science. It was just a great Star Trekian, Gene Roddenberryan type of concept, again, coming from that, like, 70s idea. But we never actually got to see that. We never got to see Wesley show up, and he has, like, a brief cameo at the end of Season 2 of Picard, and it just feels gratuitous and just like, oh, look, Will Wheaton's here. He's showing up. up just to do his little cameo thing, and it didn't really explore that idea. Here, we get him for 2 whole episodes, and he's just this, like, kind of not fully here, like, mind in 20 different places, possibly 20 different timelines way, but just kind of very fun, and you can tell Will Wheaton just has this energy about him that he brings to this, and also just the concepts, like, it feels very Doctor Who-y, like Doctor Who, Ninth Doctor, if you remember that episode, Father's Day, I think the name was the episode, with these, like, demon things that, like, erase things from time that don't fit, so these, like, weird creatures that are coming in and, like, erasing energy, feels very, very cool. It also reminds me a little bit of the Coda books. If any of you read the Star Trek Coda books, they were the sort of 3-book trilogy that wrapped out the literary universe that sort of had developed between the end of Star Trek Enterprise and the beginning of modern Star Trek. It was like it was basically the canon got erased, and the books kind of also did a very similar things with, like, this timeline getting erased and sort of conforming to what the prime timeline was. So it feels like a very similar concept to what was playing out there, and also the Doctor Who idea, and I loved it. It adds this. What I love most about this is it feels like a very modern concept and a very cool, gratuitous, like, cool timeline stuff going on here. And yet is pulling in a character from Star Trek history, Wesley Crusher, who feels natural to be here. A lot of the time when we get cameos or appearances from older Star Trek characters in modern Star Trek of these past few years, it's felt gratuitous. Like, again, the Wesley Crusher cameo on Star Trek Picard Season 2, or it has felt like they're just here to do what they did before, like much of Star Trek Picard Season 3. Like, when we've had cameos from Picard Season 3 characters, not even cameos, like Season 3 just felt like TNG Season 8 in a large way, and it was like these characters aren't doing anything new, they're just doing what they did again. And here Wesley's doing something completely new that we never got to see him do, but a lot of Star Trek fans wanted, and he doesn't overstay his welcome. He's introducing some new concepts. He feels like a good evolution of the character, but not the character again. I really adored this, and it set off the season in such a great, brilliant way. We also get some badass Janeway moments. Like, we get tank top Janeway being like, stay away from my crew. It felt very Janeway to me. This is what I love, is that Janeway is definitely a different version of the Janeway we saw in Voyager. We have evolved her character. She seems more mature. She's not the Janeway who will, like, go back in time and erase history. She seems more measured on time travel. Like, she does have that measure of control, and yet still has that radical, like, I'm gonna do my own damn thing whenever the fuck I want energy, like when she tells off Jellicoe in this episode, and when she fights these creatures. It felt such like a badass Janeway moment, like that episode where she's, like, shooting the microbiome, like the floating viruses, microcosm, something like that. It was one of those episodes of Voyager. It just had that badass Janeway energy. Killed it. It was just so freaking awesome, and you really felt the stakes being upped here with the ideas of like that they could get erased from history. We see the consequences of that, like people Janeway not remembering memories of her crew. Just great escalation of stakes. Feels very fun and feels like a good capstone to this part of the season so far, because we end with the episode with our characters going off and finding Chakotay and the Protostar, and so what's going to happen there? And feels like a natural cliffhanger to end this batch of episodes on. Again, there's a part of me that feels sad that this wasn't released week to week. I have come over the years to just really not enjoy the Netflix binge model. It is much more fun to talk about these episodes week to week with everybody. I'm kind of disappointed that, like, this video review has to be like me reviewing 5 different episodes, and probably going to tank in the algorithm as a result. Like, my review of the first 5 episodes didn't really do all that great in the algorithm either. And it's just more fun, and I feel like it would do better, and I'd have more fun talking about these episode by episode. But alas, not a big fan of the Netflix binge model. What are you going to do about it? Feels like it would have been fun to have these cliffhangers and talk about it week to week. I also love that Majel joins the group. Like, she's part of the 7. Like, I love that idea. Is like, oh, she gets to be part of this. We also get little hints of the future with Dahl sort of seeing these images of, like, him questioning him being captain. So that's an interesting sort of setup for Dahl to start having a crisis of confidence, something that he has generally not been very short on lately. So that's just an interesting thing to add into the mix here. Oh, the other thing too is I did really, I bashed Picard Season 2's appearance of Wesley Crusher here, but I did like that it did feel like it remained true to his appearance there, because we learned in Picard Season 2, spoilers for that episode, that the Gary 7, the supervisors that Gary 7 was working for way back in the original series episode, I think it was the Season 2 finale of Star Trek, the original series, Assignment Earth, that they worked for the Travelers, which is, Wesley's group. group. So we learned that in season 2. And then here, when they're sort of getting somewhere safe to hide, they hide out in Gary Seven's office from Assignment Earth. So that felt very much in continuity with what has been established in Picard season 2. And beyond that, there's been a few things like that with this season of Prodigy, like way back in the premiere episode of the season, where the Doctor mentions that the original Voyager is a floating museum, which is something that we saw in the season 4 premiere of Star Trek Lower Decks. You can tell that the writers of Prodigy wanted to not only remain in continuity with older Star Trek, but work really hard to connect all the different branches of modern Star Trek that we've been watching for the past few years. And while we've gotten little hints and connections of that here and there, like even the Voyager appearing as a museum in Star Trek Picard season 3, we've gotten little pieces of that, but it hasn't really felt like continuous. Like, again, the Cerritos and other California class ships not appearing in Picard season 3's big finale, things like that, just small elements like that. This is the first season that really feels like there's been an effort made to bring all these threads together and tell a story across different shows. And I really appreciate that. Even the stuff that I don't love, like Picard season 2, I appreciate it being brought in and built on and grown from, unlike Picard season 3, which just seemed to toss it all away in a lot of senses. So I just really did adore that. I don't know what to tell you. I've been ranting for 20 minutes now, just talking to this microphone, because I know that this video is not going to do very well, so I'm just doing this for the fun of it for all of you as well. I gotta say, this, having only gotten through half of the season so far, this might be one of my favorite seasons of Star Trek ever made. It definitely is up there in the modern Star Trek sense. And again, I say this is someone who's loved a good chunk of modern Star Trek. Life, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks is my favorite Star Trek show beyond probably Deep Space Nine. I would argue that this is better than a lot of Lower Decks. And again, I say that's high praise coming from me. No shade at Lower Decks. I love it so much. I have a Tendi hanging out back there. I'm probably going to get a tattoo of Tendi in someday. So like, that's not me dissing Lower Decks. It's me praising how good this season of Prodigy is. It just feels like everything I've ever wanted from a modern Star Trek show, in terms of just how it's telling its stories. And again, just this confidence in its own tales. Like, it's able to connect and do all these Star Trekian things and feel like it evokes all these Star Trek elements and bring in some of them literally like Wesley, and yet and evolving Janeway, and yet never loses sight of the characters that we've come to love from this show. And that is just very admirable. It is deeply impressive. And it's something that probably no other Star Trek show, maybe save Lower Decks, and maybe arguably Strange New Worlds, has really, I think, gotten really well. Like, even with Strange New Worlds, like, that shows that has like Spock and Pike, like these older characters, so there's always like an element of nostalgia baked into it, of like, oh, we get to play with these old toys that we got, TOTS instead of TOS, these old toys, and Lower Decks also kind of has that feel of like, let's reference a bunch of things. Again, I love it. That's not knocking it. But this just feels like it's not distracted by those elements in the way sometimes the other shows do. It just brings them in where it feels natural. I cannot praise this show enough. I think to put a capstone on these 5 episodes before I go and review the rest as this week goes on and into next week, this season feels very confident. It is capturing what I love about Star Trek. It has these big philosophical episodes that sort of get heady. It has some fun, beautiful characters. It has a lot of really cool action that feels very modern Star Trek. It brings in some cameos and connections to other Star Treks, but never feels gratuitous. It feels like it is a good synthesis of every single era of Star Trek to this point. It has the thoughtfulness and the headiness of the original series. It has the wonderful, beautiful, like, ensemble characters that we got in like Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, even Voyager, and even into Enterprise, and these sort of like very solid, like, cool concept episodes and episodic things from those eras as well. But then also the action and the serialization of modern Star Trek, and the references to older Star Trek that modern Star Trek does, and it pulls off all of those things with aplomb, and it just really feels like a great synthesis of all of Star Trek. And I'm in love with the season of Prodigy. It is phenomenal. If you are not watching it, I don't know what you just listened to 25 minutes of me ranting for, but I haven't helped you. I appreciate it. Thank you for helping me in the algorithm. But if you are not watching it, go watch the season. This is so good. I am loving it. I'm adoring it. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Are you loving this season of Star Trek Prodigy? I'm going to review the next 10 episodes on this channel. Those videos are probably going to tank as well, so please support them if you can. But I just want to talk about the show because it's freaking great. Adore you. Love y'all. Take care and live long and prosper.